John, are you all but set up over there? Good evening, everyone. I now call to order this December 17th, 2024 meeting of Lancaster City Council. A few reminders at the top of the meeting. I ask that you silence your phones and devices at this time if you haven't done so already. This meeting and its participants are being recorded. Tonight there will be several opportunities for public comment. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker and must please begin with your name and block of residence for our meeting record. To keep time when we're having public comment, this light before me will turn red when the speaker's time begins. It will turn yellow when there's 1 minute remaining, and it will turn red when 3 minutes have been expended. Thank you, everyone, for ensuring equal time for all this evening. And now, for those who are willing and able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Harris, would you please call the roll of members?
Yes, Madam President. Mr. Mann.
Here.
Mr. Arroyo.
Here.
Mr. Glees.
Here.
Ms. Craig.
Here.
Ms. Diaz.
Here.
Mr. Hirsch.
Here.
And President Baker.
Here. Our first item of business will be approval of the minutes from the December 10th, 2024 meeting of council.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second on the meeting minutes. Are there any council comments on the minutes? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Mann.
Aye.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Mr. Glees.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch.
Aye.
And President Baker.
Aye. Our next item are proclamations, honors, awards, and resolutions of recognition. I don't believe we have any this evening. Is that correct, Mr. Harris?
That is correct.
Thank you very much. That brings us to our first public comment period. This period is reserved for residents who have contacted the city clerk prior to the meeting. Again, speakers have 3 minutes, and please begin with your name and your block of residence for our meeting record. Mr. Harris, do we have speakers in this period?
Yes, we do. First, we have Tony Dastra.
Thank you. Mr. Dastra, good evening. As you're the first up to the podium, just make sure that green light is on. Thank you.
All right, Tony Dastra, 700 block of New Holland Avenue. Good evening, Council. I do hope to discuss the amendments I've put on your desk later, but before that, I want to talk about some of my grievances with the bike lanes, especially because now I'm a frequent user. I try to be daily with work. So one, these items are going under-maintained when there's snow, ice, leaves, debris, branches from trees, and most importantly, parked cars. The white lines are traffic control devices. I really feel you need to start ticketing people. I had a conversation with the Philadelphia solicitor over the phone, to ask, what do you guys do in this situation? He was like, they're traffic control devices. We ticket people. That will be brought up later because, number two, sometimes people use these lanes as additional sidewalks, whether it's because they're wheelchair bound or they're running. This is a huge danger depending on where the lane is at. Pedestrians should not be in the street like that. It's very troubling, and we need to be worried about sidewalk repairs and inspections to keep people out of traffic. Three, I think every alley needs to get a speed bump, especially where these bike lanes are at. For the sake of pedestrians and cyclists. It's so frequent I see someone jump out because they can't see, which is cool. That's what the stop bar is for. You're allowed to stop and then creep forward, but people are just skipping the stop bar to go where they're comfortable to get their first look, and you've probably seen bad situations yourself almost occur. So four, these protected lanes have one very dangerous flaw: left turning cars. It is countless how many times at this point in using the lanes I've nearly been hit. In one day, almost 3 times on my way to work. So what I'm asking for is left turn yield to bike signs installed at all of these intersections. I recognize that will require a traffic permit update for the signals, but I'm also asking that you reduce the parking available at these intersections so that people have more time to see cyclists coming out of the protected lane before they make that turn. I really do not want to see someone killed. So 5, I think we need to do municipal traffic certification under Title 67, Chapter 205. I think Cindy McCormick has the ability to get this credential. It will expedite the process of changing these sort of pieces of infrastructure because we were able to manage our state roads more effectively, and that's about 3 minutes. I hope to discuss the amendments I penned. I believe the public will benefit from the discussion, even if you decide against passing them. I appreciate your time and commitment to the city.
Thank you, Mr. Dastra. Mr. Harris, are there additional speakers for this period?
Yes, there are. Next is Emily Wilson.
Thank you. Good evening, Ms. Wilson.
Good evening, President Bakay. Emily Wilson, 600 block East End Avenue. I'm going to complain, but I want to acknowledge Mr. Harris for the systems that do work in the city. I submitted an online form yesterday morning, and by 10:30 I was approved to speak here today. So thank you for the systems that do work. We have systems not working. I'm a daily bike commuter, broken record. I also use the city bike lanes. I started submitting Fix-It tickets on October 23rd in the Fix-It app on my phone. That ticket was closed 5 days later with no response. Leaves were still in the bike lane, and there was no response on the Fix-It app. By the way, you can't comment back. Once you put a ticket in, that's it. I submitted 10 tickets between November 7th and December 4th for various addresses where the leaves were the worst on Buchanan Avenue and Race Avenues. I got a few responses when I stuck it under the illegal dumping category from the Streets Department. Shout out Stephanie and Corey. Sweep officers went out, gave bags to the homeowner to clean up bike lanes, yet the leaves remained. We're talking 6, 8, 10, 12 inches, wet, damp leaves. Y'all try biking through that. The Monday after Thanksgiving, I finally made a phone call to Stephanie Snyder. I had a really great conversation. She acknowledged my concern. I called back on the 5th, 4 days later, and was told that it had been scheduled. The next day, that Friday, I went out on my lunch break to pick up leaves in the 800 and 900 and 1000 block of Buchanan Avenue with a rake and a flat shovel because it had gotten so bad in the bike lanes. Coincidentally, about 15 minutes after my friend and I had started raking, Streets showed up with the sucker, which was great to see it. We LOL'd. So while we're bagging in a bad section, they're sucking, it's all getting cleaned. We flagged down a streets crew to chat with them. They were like, what the heck are y'all doing out here? They relayed to my friend and I that they were only out there because someone complained. So that was me, and that's cruddy. I shouldn't have to complain and beg and plead and wail and submit 10 Fix-It tickets, make multiple phone calls. 44 days passed. We're supposed to clean the streets every other week. The bike lanes stayed trashed. It's not my job to spend my lunch hour manually raking leaves, but I'm going to do it because I'm a Vision Zero hero. But I'm not holding my breath waiting for the city to take Vision Zero seriously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Harris, are there additional speakers for this period?
There are none, Madam President.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda this evening are reports requested by council. Confirming, Mr. Harris, that we have none of those. Is that right?
No, we have none tonight.
Thank you. Interim reports of committees of council, that's correct. There's none of those this evening.
None of those.
So we will move into our legislative agenda. Councilor Diaz.
If I may, I'd like to make a motion to discuss the potential amendments prior to the rest of legislation, if possible.
To clarify, Councilor Diaz, you're making a motion to reorder the legislative agenda, is that correct?
That's correct.
And is there any specific order that you're looking for?
If possible, if we can move the legislative bill 10, 11, and 12 to the bottom until we can discuss, what is it?
12 and 97.
Okay, 12 and 97.
So your motion is to move bills 10, 11, and 12 to the bottom of the legislative agenda.
Not 12.
Is that correct, Councilor Diaz?
Is that correct? Tony, can you come up here and give us the numbers?
Councilor Diaz, I'm very sorry to do this, but I have recognized you in this meeting, and you're a bit out of order in this, so I need to know what you're proposing.
I'm proposing
Ordinance number 12 and resolution 97 to the top.
That's correct.
All right.
97 and 12.
So resolution number 97 and Bill 12
Yes.
to the top of the agenda. Okay, thank you very much. We have a second for Councilor Diaz's motion.
Oh, can I second it?
It's only, to make it clear, it's just a discussion for council to understand what the possibility is for people that are in moderate to low income before proposing this budget, because that's what's going to affect.
Is there a second for Councilor Diaz's motion? I hear none, the motion dies, but we will move forward with the rest of our legislative agenda as posted. The first item up on our legislative agenda is Administration Bill Number 10, 2024. Mr. Harris.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Lancaster, County of Lancaster, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, appropriating specific sums estimated to be required for the specific purposes of the city government hereinafter set forth during the year 2025, allowing for a severance provision, providing for the repeal of inconsistent ordinances, and providing for an effective date.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Royo, anything to add for this one?
Thank you, Council President. I don't have anything additional to add. We had significant discussions regarding the 2025 budget, so nothing more to add for tonight.
Thank you very much. Are there any additional council comments on Bill Number 10? From the public?
Tony Dasher, 700 block of New Holland Avenue. So my biggest disappointment here is that at a minimum, we're not doing anything with exemptions. I suppose that could change hypothetically later, but I'm not going to hold my breath on it. Because really it wasn't a matter of not having enough time. I've been very open about this throughout the home rule procedures, that we could be using this to improve the lives of our lowest income residents, and there's been no discussion up here. The only person who's reached out to me about what I've tried to put before you is Janet Diaz. There's so much grief she gets from people openly, but you know what? In this regard, she was the only person who reached out to me to discuss this matter, and that's upsetting. The pictures we paint of people are not always the full truth. People are receptive to ideas. Sometimes strange alliances form you don't expect. And I just want to thank you. I will talk about these because I did put work and time into them, and I hope that they can be used in the future by the city. But I don't think people went through home rule to expect change later. They wanted delivery now. People don't want a cold pizza. Well, sometimes they do, I suppose, but it's not very palatable. In any case, thank you for your time.
Council President, may I just say a few comments?
Ms. Raji, please.
Thank you. Mr. Dastra, thank you. I know that you have raised this during the home rule process, and I would say that there is support for some kind of exemption, and in order for us, for council tonight to pass the city budget, we have to pass a balanced budget. And in order to have an exemption, we need to understand what the revenue impacts are to be able to account for those reductions in revenue in some line item in the budget. Please let me finish. This has generated a significant amount of internal conversation, and I regret that you actually didn't reach out to the administration to talk a little bit further. And I regret that our schedules did not align for Councilor Diaz and I to have more conversation. There are a couple of challenges that we have that I believe we do need to have more time to work through. And I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not going to pretend to be one tonight. There is a question that comes up, as I understand your proposal, which I got this afternoon and have not had time to run the numbers on. But I don't have an understanding, based on your proposal, of what the cost implications are to the proposal. You're also, and so we can't make reductions to the revenue lines in the budget that now council has a motion on the table for right now. Additionally, we did reach out to the team at the Pennsylvania Economy League to understand a little bit more about what other communities had similar types of exemptions. And what we learned was that there is only one home rule municipality that has a $12,000 exemption, and it's not for the municipality, it's actually for the school district. And I'll be happy to share this information with council. There are no cities that have an exemption like this, although there are a number of boroughs and townships, though none are home rule, and none exceed $12,000. And so you have a number of exemptions, beginning at $5,000, $12,000, and then 50% of the median income, which is currently $60,000. Again, I did not have a chance to study all of this.
Sure.
There's an additional factor that is weighing into this, which is the Tax Collection Bureau at the county has indicated to us that they will not service this, which means then we would be, city staff would be responsible for reviewing about 3,000 plus individual tax returns, and then making a determination and then issuing a separate refund. We are not prepared, given the fact that this is this moment in time, to put forward to council what the cost of that would be, nor do we have an understanding of the process which we would need to develop. With that, it is my hope that we can continue to have this conversation and that we can continue to learn about what our options are through having a new home rule charter that goes into effect January 1st. I do understand that it was the hope, my hope and others, including yourself, Councilor Diaz, I think many council members, to figure this out and to be able to do this quite quickly. And with the information that we've gleaned, and not having a chance to have had this conversation, I just wanted to share that information with members of council and with the public this evening.
So,
Thank you, Mayor Sarachi. Councilor Diaz.
If I may, the charter should have been talked about probably a year prior, bringing it forward into voting and processing. What I'm looking at is, we went in to a home charter, but yet we didn't plan anything in the past to be prepared to bring the charter forward, which means that we're holding back, we're not discussing this and having everything at hand to answer questions to our community and say, this is why we're raising the taxes, this is why we're eliminating certain projects and certain things, because if we don't do this, then guess what, you're not going to have it. It's hard to talk with our community and give them that answer. Going back to other charter cities which are eliminating the charter because of the problems, I think that we're really not being forthcoming to our community, because we should have had this way past before bringing it forward, because now we're planning 18 months to figure out how to do the charter. That just, it just doesn't go well.
Councilor Diaz. Thank you. I would like to say two things. To your comments, I think that we're not here to litigate home rule. We had 18 months to do that. We had robust public outreach to do that, public information sessions to do that. We learned about what we could and could not do in this room. We talked about it ad nauseum. So I disagree that anything was rushed in the home rule process. 18 months is an awfully long time. What I do would like to say about Mr. Dastra, what you've proposed via Councilor Diaz this evening, is that I do believe that we should explore some type of relief for our lowest income residents. I regret that we could not discuss this prior to this evening. In fact, I think the rest of council received these proposals on paper today.
Correct.
And heard about them in passing the end of last week at the earliest. And that was maybe just myself. What I would like to also say is that the proposals specifically that you've given adds an additional earned income tax increase
Correct.
that I am uncomfortable with.
Sure.
And I believe that there are other ways that we can make sure that we're doing the exact right thing. And 13 days before the end of the year is not the time to do it, but we can explore that all of next year when we have the data, when we know exactly how much it will cost to administrate such a program, where we can get our tax collection bureau more information from them about what they would what they would charge us if they were to do it. We can get information about how exactly much that would cost us, what that would mean in terms of use of reserves for our projections over the next 10 years, which we're now required to do. Thank you to the Home Rule Charter that you helped draft. So while this evening I personally am not comfortable moving forward with an unfunded plan that we're not exactly sure how that will impact our finances, that doesn't mean I'm not committed to looking for solutions in the future.
I am glad to hear that. The reason, I'm just going to speak for myself here on this a little bit, because it is central.
I will give you time to do that. I will start it now. Yeah,
Thank you.
I am endeavoring to make sure that everyone has equal time, and I will remind you, we are still in public comment for this.
Okay, thank you. So I gave numbers to council projections. My best effort as just a home rule study commissioner guy who pulled census data from 2012 on households. So it's just one exemption. I've always targeted the 50% city median income range. I think that will be clear in those documents. The reason you guys got those documents so late is because I felt there has been no energy put into this at all. And so over the weekend, I feverishly researched and looked up and drafted these because I recognize it's coming towards the end, but I'd rather throw a Hail Mary pass than just sit on the sidelines. So I recognize there's a level of discomfort here, but you can't say I haven't been doing my level best, volunteering my own time to put information together for council. I recognize some of it's been handed out on paper, like the information tonight, like the projections 2 weeks ago at the committee meeting, but this has been more than just 13 days prior. This has been at least a month, and to circle back to the whole reaching out, I didn't reach out to Janet. Janet gave me a call about this, and that's what I was kind of hoping for when I mentioned these things in the public meetings we have to educate people about home rule, because I remember making that comment at West Start regarding exemptions. It's been a forefronted thing for me, but there's been no energy put into looking into these exemptions. I shouldn't be doing these financial projections as a resident, but there are numbers, and I don't understand why the city hasn't given it any projection at all. Like, frankly, the city government should have worked on this. It should have been done. I'm just trying to put the stuff together because I don't feel it's been looked at. So that's why you got all these late, is because I didn't even have them until yesterday. I just felt so comfortable putting it all together, wrapping it up as best as I can, because I recognize it's late and staff time's important, and I figured at a minimum these documents I put together could have some discussion and potential, a good week of work to hammer out some final details and figure out what these things would look like to go forward. I appreciate the additional time.
Thank you, Mr. Dastra. Additional public comment on the bill. Hearing none. Mr. Harris.
Mr. Madden? Aye. Mr. Roy?
Aye.
Mr. Please?
Aye.
Ms. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch? Aye. And President Baker?
Aye. Next item on the agenda is Administration Bill Number 11, 2024. Mr. Harris.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Lancaster, County of Lancaster, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, amending 27026 of the Code of the City of Lancaster to levy all persons and property within the City of Lancaster subject to taxation for the year 2025 for general revenue purposes, 12.64 mills on each dollar of assessed valuation of real estate, the same being the sum of $1.26.4 of each $100 of said assessed valuation, which tax, for billing purposes, is to be included in the billing of the tax levied on property for general revenue purposes, providing for the repeal of inconsistent ordinances, providing for the severability of the ordinance, and providing for an effective date. The imposition of the 12.64 millage tax rate imposes no change on the taxes imposed during the calendar year 2024. Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Arroyo.
Thank you, Council President. Nothing additional to add for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any council comments on the bill? From the public? Good evening.
Arthur Morris, 434 West Chestnut Street. Just a quick question. Does this represent no tax increase in millage?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Additional comments from the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Matt? Aye. Mr. Roy?
Aye.
Mr. Please?
Aye.
Ms. Crabb?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch?
Aye.
President Baker?
Aye. Next item on the agenda is Administration Bill Number 12, 2024. Mr. Harris.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Lancaster, County of Lancaster, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, to increase the tax imposed for general revenue purposes on the earned income and net profits of individual residents of the City of Lancaster, as set forth in 23A of the Code of the City of Lancaster, from 0.6% to 1.1%, providing for the repeal of inconsistent ordinances, providing for the severability of the ordinance, and providing for an effective date.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Arroyo.
Nothing additional to add, Council President.
Thank you. Are there any council comments on the bill? From the public?
Again, Arthur Morris, 434 West Chestnut Street. Earlier this year, and there was some discussion here, I attended a meeting with 3 former mayors and raised the question about exemptions. That was back in June, I think, or July, and I'm quite disappointed that nothing has been done. It would not have taken a lot of time. I understand the complications in collecting it or getting somebody to help with it, but the idea that you don't know the cost of something like that, somebody could do it pretty quick back of the envelope. I certainly could on it. But you do project with this 0.5% increase, I think $15,740,000 as income from that total of 1.1%. My calculations show that that's a couple of $1 million below what you will receive. Let me briefly explain. From 2019 to 2023, 4 years, you actually audited, and your actual audited income, these are exact figures from your audits, from EIT went from $6.6 million to $8.7 million, an increase of 31.5% over that 4-year period, averaging 8% a year increase. We won't know the actual amount for 2024 revenue until your audit is completed next year. We do know that you budgeted $9.1 million for EIT revenue this year. A simple 6% increase for 2025, not 8%, remember you've averaged 8%, a simple 6% increase will result in an estimated 2025 revenue before increasing the 0.5%, $9.7 million based on this year's budget. Now, if you approve the 0.5% addition to EIT, this projects to revenue of $17.785 million, $2 million more than you are currently projecting. Please note in this calculation, I use your 2024 budget number of $9.1 million as the basis of this simple projection. If you look at the budget you have before you, the city is actually estimating that you will receive $9.9 million in 2024. Using 6% increase on top of this 224 projected revenue results in projected 2025 revenue of $10.5 million. Now, if you approve the 0.5% to the EIT, this projects to 2025 revenue of $19 million, $3.5 million more in revenue than you are projecting in your proposed budget. By the way, this is on top of your $2.56 million surplus projection for 2025 in your budget. Essentially, it appears that based on your numbers, that you are overtaxing the citizens of Lancaster if you increase EIT by the proposed 0.5%. And finally, I will just say, please note, in my projections, I'm simply using the city's numbers and projecting a revenue growth of 6% for 2025 for EIT, when such an increase averaged 8% from 2019 to 2023. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council President, may I ask a follow-up question?
Mayor Saraji.
Mayor Morris, were you using a full 12 months for your calculations for 2025, or did it include the lag?
No, I did, if there's some reason why that would be the case. Typically, there's a lag in every year. So if there's a lag this year, there would be a lag next year, unless your 0.5% cannot be implemented and it's only going to be over 9 months. That would be a different matter, and I would understand that.
I would like for you to confer with Director Campbell, Tina, at some point after the meeting, just to review your calculations. What we understand is that there will be a lag for 2025, and you are correct that essentially what the additional revenue is to shore up our general reserve fund, which is at currently, I believe,
14.7.
14%, and we're trying to get it closer to 20. We are trying to do a variety of things related to our Moody's bond rating as we are going to be going out for additional borrowing. And so there are some other, it is true that we are trying to shore up our financial picture for our longer-term capital planning process that council is engaging with over the next 6 months. So I encourage you to talk to Director Campbell.
Well, two things, if I may, in response. One, there should be an answer tonight on this. You're going to approve 0.5%. You're increasing taxes 83% in EIT. That's a big increase. And if you're proposing to increase now for future years, 3, 4, 5 years out, that's a very unusual way to do it, to make today's people pay for what the costs are going to be in the future. When you're going to project, but you really don't know. And I think there needs to be a very big debate on how you go about doing it. I respect that you want to increase, but you do have 14.7 million in reserve. What I've just calculated here is an additional 6. That's a big cost to the present day taxpayers, and particularly those on fixed income. And they're my biggest concern, quite frankly. If you're going to be doing anything, you should be taking this extra money to fix the issue that might be related to the people that make less than, I think you can do it up to $13,000 under the current legislation. I'm not trying to be difficult here. I'm just trying to make sure that that a simple number that you have in the budget, when you look at it closely over history, you may come up with a different number. And I'd be happy to talk to Ms. Campbell, but that's after the fact. You're going to take action right now. This should be resolved now, in my mind.
Thank you, Mayor Morris. Good evening.
Good evening. Matt Alsbach, 200 block of Nevin Street. You know, it's interesting right now living in Lancaster City because it's the perfect example of a microcosm of the issues plaguing the Democratic Party. The perception of the out-of-touch elitist individuals whose motto is, if you don't agree with all of our views, then you don't get a seat at the table. Coupled with that, with the only fiscal talking point being taxation, and this is how as a nation we got saddled with Donald Trump again. I was in opposition of home rule for the simple fact that giving any entity in government too much power is never of benefit to the general public. I have watched this administration surreptitiously circumvent the views of constituents when it's not in line with their own self-interests, from the bait and switch of 213 College Avenue, the tree ordinance modification, known parking issues, yet we are still allowing all of these new apartments to be built with no parking. And finally, home rule, just to mention a few. But you know how the story goes. If the rules start to apply, you just change them. Home rule was brought to light to fix the fiscal overspending and mismanagement by our administration. Mayor Sirachi was smart, and she spun the narrative that she is doing us a favor by not increasing property taxes with home rule, by finding another way to burden the already highest tax municipality in Lancaster County. If you look at the math, currently the total 1.1% earned income tax is balanced out as 0.5% to the school district of Lancaster and 0.6% going to the general purpose to the city. If the proposed increase passes at 0.5% for general purposes, that is an 83% increase in the amount of taxes being paid. I find it interesting that the 0.3% increase heavily touted before election seems to have gone right out the window. Just another example of the bait and switch technique. Who's going to stop it now? Certainly not a majority of our council, it doesn't seem. But that's the way it is, I guess. So we just have to find some solace in that. I will end my diatribe tonight by recommending a decrease of the proposed earned income tax to 0.9% for the general fund, a 50% increase from the current 0.6%. That, in line with the 12% increase in sewer rates and trash increases, may seem a bit more palatable for those who are already paying the most in this county. I also recommend our city council take a look at their peers in Harrisburg and take some lessons on how they hold their mayor accountable and make sure that the best interest of their constituents are a priority instead of just rubber stamping everything that comes through. Thank you.
Council President, if I may, just a statement on the 0.5% increase. So my understanding and what was presented to us in several meetings, first reading, second reading, as well as a hearing, was this was a conservative number, but it was also in a 10-year projection plan that resulted in no additional tax increases in millage, but also it didn't account for any expanding of government or any additional services. So although the 0.5% projections may be conservative, it was to my understanding that the projections were based off of, no additional increases. And that's why I would be in favor of the 0.5%.
Thank you, Councilor Ahmed. Additional public comment? Mr. Dastra.
Tony Dash at 700 Block, New Holland Avenue. I appreciate what you're putting down because I do agree. I'm all right with that 0.5% increase, and I'll explain a little bit what I'll put forward. But just as a note, projections don't always work out. We created a deal for the Marriott, and now we're auditing them because we didn't get anything. That was way before your time. It's one of my first experiences in this council room. In any case, the reason why I've put something before you that reaches so high can only be explained. I'll explain more with this later, but I had learned that we couldn't exempt residents' income. Like if you're making $40,000 and the exemption would be $30,000, I was under the impression for months until a resident and I had a conversation about the municipal and state laws, that it's actually once you make $30,001 in that scenario, you're getting taxed on that whole total. So that's where this newer idea of the rebate program came out. So I can appreciate that as being more rushed than everything else I've been saying. But in regards to just an exemption in general, this is the most frustrating part for me because I do believe Art's right, or Mayor Morris is right. I'm not a financial professional, but I have thrown projections out, and I do believe those projections are able to be worked fairly easily by city staff. But at my heart, I have to say this, and I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but I feel like more time got put into opposing my concept of districts than supporting the proposals for tax exemptions. That's really what drives me a little in this situation. Because I recognize we're going to have differences of opinions, but it seems like there was just a really focused effort on stopping one thing that a lot of community members believed in. People were worried that home rule wouldn't pass. I do think this point of information should be known. I did an analysis. Yes, it did pass roughly 70-30, but if you include all the people who showed up to the ballot box and didn't vote on the question, it only passed by 54%. Now, I recognize that's not how voting works, but that figure should be concerning to you. Those people were primarily in the southeast part of town as well. I think people were confused, people were concerned, they didn't know what to think or feel. And right now, neither do I.
Additional comments from the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Matt? Aye. Mr. Roy?
Aye.
Mr. Cleese?
Aye.
Ms. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
No.
Mr. Hirsch?
Aye.
President Baker?
Aye. Our next item on our legislative agenda this evening is Administration Resolution Number 13, 2024. Mr. Harris.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, amending Section 24929 of the Code of the City of Lancaster to increase the sewer rentals for customers within the city limits by 12% effective January 6, 2025. Providing for the repeal of inconsistent ordinances, providing for the severability of the ordinance, and providing that the ordinance shall take effect as provided by Pennsylvania law.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Arroyo?
Nothing additional to add, Council President.
Thank you. Any additional council comments on the bill? From the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Matt?
Aye.
Mr. Roy?
Aye.
Mr. Cleese?
Aye.
Ms. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch?
Aye.
And President Baker?
Aye. Next item on the agenda is Administration Bill Number 14, 2024. Mr. Harris.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, establishing appropriations of any American Rescue Plan Act proceeds received in 2022 and previously awarded and allocated to non-city entities for community facilities programs and affordable housing programs, which are returned to the city unused for the purposes set forth in their grant agreement with the city, providing for the repeal of inconsistent ordinances, providing for the severability of the ordinance, and providing that the ordinance shall take effect as provided by Pennsylvania law.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Craig.
Thank you, Council President. This is a bill that went action which would redirect any ARP funding previously allocated for community facilities or housing initiatives to the city critical repair program if it was unspent by the grantees. Adoption of this bill may save the money from being returned to the U.S. Treasury. Staff is actively working with the awardees to ensure that the funds are spent. This bill takes effect in the event that any of those grant funds, they're unable to be spent by the required time by the grantees.
Thank you, Councilor Craig, and that's by the end of 2026, if I'm not
Correct.
mistaken. Thank you. Any additional council comments on the bill? From the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Matt?
Aye.
Mr. Roy?
Aye.
Mr. Cleese?
Aye.
Ms. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch?
Aye.
And President Baker?
Aye. Next item on the agenda is Administration Bill Number 15, 2024. Mr. Harris.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, establishing appropriations of $1 million of American Rescue Plan Act proceeds received in 2022 to improve the Jackson Street Top Lot Park, providing for the repeal of inconsistent ordinances, providing for the severability of the ordinance, and providing that the ordinance shall take effect as provided by Pennsylvania law.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Hirsch.
Thank you, Council President. This will sound like kind of a broken record, but basically the same. With the passage of the budget, $1 million of ARPA funds were freed from revenue replacement to be reinvested back into the community. And so these will be going into the Joe Jackson Tot Lot project, which the city also received a $250,000 grant from DCED for. And thanks to the receipt of these funds, this project's timeline will be a little more aggressive than was previously planned.
Thank you, Councilor Hirsch. Are there any additional council comments on the bill?
I do have a quick question.
Councilor Diaz.
In regards to the funds and the renovation, is the renovation including the skateboard design or skateboard possibility?
I don't believe that this design had that in it, but Director Campbell, if you would wish to speak to that. I recall seeing these designs back when we spoke about the grant dollars that we were receiving for the project.
Thank you very much for the question. Joe Jackson is a smaller park. The park that has some potential for the skateboarding is South End. And that's in the preliminary designs right now. A lot of engineering and reconfirmation would need to take place, and it may be not a full-fledged skate park, but a minor version, a smaller version of one. But yes, that's included in the South End Park, not in Joe Jackson.
Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
all I have.
Any further council comments on the bill? From the public? Please. Good evening.
Jose Rivera, 100 block of Coral Street, representing the West Crystal Volunteers. Now, you said you were remodeling 4 parks, am I right? 3? Okay. My question is, how about Crystal Park? And the reason I'm going to bring this up to you is because that park was remodeled. Am I correct? And you guys forgot to put a couple of things back into our park. First thing that you forgot was the flagpole. And thanks to Millsy, we got fundings for that flagpole. Am I correct? We're missing the sign that says West Crystal Volunteers. I would like that sign back up because it's already paid for. If the park got remodeled, then that sign should have went back on. Another thing, the electric outlets in that park need to be addressed. And this is not the first time I'm bringing this to council. Because right now those boxes are being wrapped with black electric tape. Hello? Let me end it here, and then towards the end of this meeting, I will update everybody on Crystal Park and the problems we're having. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera.
Just to comment that it is my understanding from the Department of Public Works that there are plans to replace the electrical outlets as you've identified. And if you could see Mr. Campbell after the meeting, Mr. Rivera, he can provide you with a timeline for when that work will be completed.
Thank you, Mayor Srirachi. Any further public comment on the bill at hand? As a reminder, that's regarding funding for the Joe Jackson Tot Lot. Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Meadow. Aye. Mr. Roy. Aye. Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch.
Aye.
And President Bega.
Aye. The next item on our agenda this evening is Administration Bill Number 16, 2024. Mr. Harris.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, establishing appropriations of $6 million of American Rescue Plan Act proceeds received in 2022 providing for the repeal of inconsistent ordinances, providing for the severability of the ordinance, and providing that the ordinance shall take effect as provided by Pennsylvania law.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Ahmed.
Thank you, Council President. Not much additional to add. This resolution is approving the $6 million in the 2024 budget retroactively per ARPA guidelines.
Thank you, Councilor Ahmed. Are there any additional council comments on the bill? From the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Ahmed?
Aye.
Mr. Roy?
Aye.
Mr. Cleese?
Aye.
Ms. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch?
Aye.
And President Baker?
Aye. Next item on our agenda is Administration Bill Number 17, 2024. Mr. Harris.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, establishing appropriations of $2.4 million of American Rescue Plan Act proceeds received in 2022, providing for the repeal of inconsistent ordinances, providing for the severability of the ordinance, and providing that the ordinance shall take effect as provided by Pennsylvania law.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Ahmed.
Thank you, Council President. Once again, not too much to add. Just with this resolution, this is for the $2.4 million in the 2025 budget, which is being done in advance due to timelines set by federal ARPA regulations. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Councilor Ahmed. Any additional council comments on the bill? From the public? Mr. Dasher.
I will just remember, Tony Dasher, 700 Block, New Holland Avenue. I'll still discuss my amendment proposal for Resolution 97, but I know I've said before that I have mixed feelings on using revenue replacement, although I recognize the need for it. I'm not throwing it out the door. I just have a level of discomfort without the exemption. My question, and I don't actually know who to direct this to, I feel like, because I believe you're chair of the Finance Committee, Mr. Arroyo, and you're chair of Economic Development, Mr. Ahmed, would there be any commitment from council, and specifically I think your areas of council, those committees, in creating a ad hoc committee through 2025 to evaluate items like I've been putting forward tonight? I say both because I think that finance is also impactful to economic development of our residents, and it'd be nice to have a mix of counselors in that sort of ad hoc committee, as well as residents like myself, maybe Art Morris, maybe Mr. Alsbach, who is here as well, to be included in those conversations so we can, as a public and a government, evaluate some of these options throughout 2025 to make sure there's a solution in place at the end of next year. Do you think I can maybe get a signal of commitment for that sort of ad hoc committee? Again, I don't know who exactly I'm looking at.
Council President, if I may.
Councilor Ahmed.
I can't speak to the creation of any ad hoc committees that may require resolution or ordinance passed from council, but I can commit, as always, to having an open dialogue with both you and other residents on some of the matters that you brought up and some additional matters as well.
Council President, if I may.
Councilor Roy.
I'll second that as far as, can't speak to an ad hoc committee, but as far as the discussion regarding exemptions or any rebates in the future, I'm definitely open to that discussion, looking forward to having an open dialogue around that.
All right, thank you for your response.
Additional comments from the public on the bill? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Ahmed?
Aye.
Mr. Roy?
Aye.
Ms. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch?
Aye.
And President Baker?
Aye. All right, that should bring us to Administration Bill Number 18, 2024. Mr. Harris.
An ordinance of the Council of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, confirming and directing that all ordinances of the City of Lancaster, as codified in the Code of the City of Lancaster, will remain in full force and effect to the extent that same are not inconsistent with the Home Rule Charter of the City of Lancaster. Upon the Home Rule Charter of the City of Lancaster taking effect, on January 1st, 2025, providing that the proper officials and proper officers and officials of the City of Lancaster be and hereby are directed to take any and all actions necessary to effectuate the provisions of this ordinance, providing that all the appropriate officials and officers of the City of Lancaster be and hereby are authorized to direct and perform their duties in accordance with the Code of the City of Lancaster and the new Home Rule Charter of the City of Lancaster, providing for the repeal of inconsistent ordinances, providing for the severability of the ordinance, and providing that the ordinance will take effect in accordance with Pennsylvania law.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilors, this came before us at our committee of the whole in December and also at the last meeting. This will allow us to continue operations of the city while we are in the transition to our home rule charter form of government. The Home Rule Transition Committee will meet to make sure that our city code is updated, but in the meantime, this ordinance allows us to continue operations as normal. Any additional council comments on the bill? From the public? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Matt? Aye. Mr. Roy?
Aye.
Mr. Please?
Aye.
Ms. Craig?
Aye.
Ms. Diaz?
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch?
Aye.
President Bacon?
Aye. That will take us to item B on our agenda. This is ordinances for first reading. This would normally be our last meeting of the year, but we do have another one coming up. That's Administration Bill number 19, 2024. Mr. Harris.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lancaster, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, establishing appropriations of $150,000 of American Rescue Plan Act proceeds received in 2022, providing for the repeal of inconsistent ordinances and providing for the severability of the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Councilor Ahmed.
Thank you, Council President. As we have previously discussed, setting up measures for if if ARPA funds were not used by certain awardees, that those funds would go back for the critical repair program. And it was identified that one of the projects would be returning $150,000 of ARPA to the city, which will be allocated for the critical home repairs program, similar to the resolution of any other future monies that may be returned.
Thank you very much. Any other council comments on the bill for our first reading? And I will just make mention that the time set for that meeting is December 23rd at 6 p.m., is that correct? Not 6:30, at 6 o'clock here at City Hall. Comments from the public on the first reading?
Council President, if I may just add a little bit more background.
I appreciate that. That may answer some of the questions.
Yes. On Monday, December the 9th, I had a conversation with the Executive Director of the Lancaster Lebanon Habitat for Humanity because it was a project that was flagged that they may not be able to fulfill the requirements as set forth in their contract with ARPA as it pertains to 913 Wheatland Avenue. And because of their model, rising costs, and that they have strategically chosen to move the project from 2025 to 2026, and as well that they do not have the project 100% funded, which was a condition for the release of the $150,000 of ARPA funds. It was mutually agreed upon between the city and Lancaster Lebanon Habitat for Humanity that they would forego the ARPA funds that had been allocated to Habitat for the Wheatland Avenue construction project, and to instead enter into an MOU, a memorandum of understanding with the city, that would be accomplished no later by March 30, 2025, to encumber future home dollars that are allocated to the city for this project, thus continuing with the will of council in terms of the projects that were originally funded for affordable housing, but using a different funding mechanism that accommodates the changes for Habitat for Humanity and the restrictions by ARPA to have all of the dollars allocated. And I appreciate that, this happened on December the 9th, that we were able to mutually agree to this as a way to solve for this, and that $150,000 can be allocated to the city's critical repair program, which even with the additional $300,000 that was allocated this year, all of those funds have been spent, and this will provide additional support for additional critical repairs throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Sarachi. And I would also just add that though earlier this, in this meeting, we did pass the ordinance to have sort of a catch-all plan for any unused ARPA funds, because we are aware right now that these funds are not going to be able to be used for that purpose. We're taking a proactive stance and putting those dollars back into something where we can use them immediately in our community. So I do appreciate that and their forthrightness in this circumstance. Opening it up to comments from the public, Mr. Dastra.
Tony Dastra, 700 Block New Holland Avenue. I just want to echo what my concern is with this allocation, because I think all of us agree that we want to see these dollars spent. If I remember correctly, there was a budget meeting I don't think it was the last one, I think it was one before that, where it was noted that only 4 people had used the critical repair program in that year. I have concerns about allocating the funds to this program. I'm incorrect. I'll ask a follow-up, just because I understand I might not be referring to the right information. The critical repair program these are being allocated to there are paperwork requirements for residents, correct, to submit for the funds?
Sorry, I'm going to direct you to Director Delps to answer all of your questions.
Okay.
So, Mr. Dastra, if you have several questions, I'll use your time for that, and then I will ask Director Delps to respond.
That's honestly my only real question, because my concern is that if there is a paperwork requirement, we need to ensure that this program can see those funds actually be utilized, because if there's a paperwork issue from the resident perspective, we can't force residents to give the city paperwork, So I think it might be worth looking at the program itself then to maybe also include sidewalks, but other needs, and what we can do to expedite the processing of those things to ensure that if those funds, however unfortunately they may come into possession of that reallocation, which I appreciate you looking into the future for, that they don't get lost completely, but we should evaluate the program to make sure that we can leverage all of those dollars so that there's no hang up from the residential side of things. So that was my only real question, but I think what I'm hoping for with the program sums up, yeah.
Thank you. Director Dallas, if you could speak to the utilization of the program and just very high-level overview of the way that residents receive the funds, and also, I think, just to reiterate the fact that we've already gone through the funds that were allocated previously.
Yes, that's correct. Good evening, Council. And I have to commend Tony. He actually has a really good memory on this particular front. It was last year that we were only able to accomplish 4 critical repair housing projects, and that was because we had run out of money. There wasn't any additional CDBG money available for those projects. Since City Council allocated that additional $300,000 of ARPA funding earlier this year, we've been able to accomplish a total of 37 critical repair homes year to date, and the hope is that we can get to more of those households that are on the waiting list. So hopefully that answers the question. Tony, if you have further questions, I'm happy to chat with you about that as well.
Thank you, Director Dallas.
Excuse me,
Councilor Diaz.
I think there's someone trying to get in the building and they can't, they said the door's locked.
I'll gladly go get
Any other
them
city
in.
staff in the room, because I need Mr. Harris to be able to be here for the purposes of taking notes, could just double check and make sure that the lock system is working correctly. It's not a regular council night, so that may be part of the issue. It's not usually late enough that they lock after this time, so we'll check on that. Thank you.
I just wanted to walk up and say thank you, because I couldn't remember the reasoning, but just knowing that I was right about the number makes me feel a little bit better. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, again, any other public comments on this item? Good evening.
Good evening. Irene Grievous on the 400 block of West End Avenue. I am one that had applied for the critical repair program. As many of you know, and as the city is very well aware, my property has been condemned for over 3 years. So if anyone is a candidate for the ARPA funding or the critical repair program, I would think I would have received a response by now, after almost 2 years when the critical repair program became available. Yet I've been ignored, delayed, or no response at all. So it's apparent. City Council, the city, really doesn't care about its residents. It's basically caring about yourselves and policing yourselves, serving yourselves, with really not taking into account the residents of the city and how many people have been displaced from this property as a result with no resolution. So I would like to know what the status is from my application that I submitted, not only one, but actually several applications, and I have not received a response. In addition to, obviously, the trash situation, which still has been unresolved. And I'll bring that, I guess, toward the end of the meeting, because it has nothing to do with this particular question about the ARPA concern.
Thank you, Ms. Grievous. To answer your question about the critical repair program, just for general information, those funds are to be given to housing that is a primary residence, so owner-occupied residences.
May I respond?
You still have time. Please go ahead.
Okay. It was going to be my own residence, but I was told that it doesn't matter if it's my residence, a renter, or anything. Anything to do with my name, I was basically excluded or given the runaround or no response
Do you
at all.
reside within the city of Lancaster in your primary residence?
As of now, no, I do not.
Thank you. Additional comments from the public on the first reading of the bill? All right, hearing none, we'll close that at this time. Again, there will be a special meeting of council at this room December 23rd at 6 p.m. to consider this item. We'll now move into resolutions on our agenda. We have one of those this evening, resolution number 97, 2024. Mr. Harris.
A resolution of the council of the city of Lancaster amending the schedule of fees and charges for solid waste and recycling services provided by the city's contractor to owners of residential properties and owners of opt-in properties to become effective January 1st, 2025.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilor Arroyo.
Thank you, Council President. The only thing that I'll add is that the reason for the increase in fees is due to the increase in fees from the hauler themselves. So the city uses these fees to cover their costs for trash and recycling. That is all, Council President.
Thank you very much, Councilor Arroyo. Any additional comments from council on the resolution? From the public?
All right. Tony Dasher, 700 block of New Holland Avenue. So, like I said earlier, it was relatively new knowledge compared to my entire advocacy of exemptions that I didn't realize people had that floor. Once you go past it, you also get taxed on the rest, which is where the idea to create a rebates program came out. At first, it was a really loose idea, but then I started thinking about the utilities we have in the city, trash service being one of them, because it covers all city residents, unless they live in a private housing structure and have private trash service. But some of those buildings are allowed to opt in. Actually, I think all of them could opt in, but in any case, there is an opt-in program. So I've always been targeting $350 for that rebate under my proposals, because that seemed to be where it's benefiting the lower end, and the middle end is seeing some at least reduced tax burden based off the proposal set forward. And this just kind of lined right up with that number, $343.20. If you include credit card processing fees, which some residents have been really frustrated about, made sense to me to incorporate this as the solution, because it's like, whoa, the number's right there. Residents have to pay less in credit card fees. That money's not going to the processors. We can do it internally as a part of a tax mechanism. It just seemed to make sense. On top of that, I understand we provide relief in this way to seniors and some people living under the Lancaster City Housing Authority. So I was like, well, they can't qualify for more than one discount, so if we use this mechanism, we could actually add additional funds to the solid waste fund to also maybe start piloting a composting program in the city, because now you have additional monies for those individual households going into the system. So I get it, we're not moving forward with it, but I just want to explain why this all came about. It just seemed to be the right fit with everything I've been saying. Sometimes things just work out that way. And again, that's why I was advocating for such a high tax rate, is because residents no longer would have to pay for trash at all. And we could potentially expand upon additional municipal services. We're required to pick up trash as part of state law. And if we can create more more marketable materials out of incorporating composting procedures, that's also a financial win for the city. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Dastra. Additional comments from the public on the resolution? Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Matt.
Sorry, Mr. Harris, just one moment, I did miss, please come on up. Good evening.
Good evening, Susie Gomez, 100 block of North Reservoir Street. I came in a little late, but I was listening to it on YouTube. Unfortunately, it's very distasteful to even listen to all this. I wanted to, stress, number one, Art Morris, thank you for being here. Thank you for speaking. Thank you for taking your time and just coming in and sharing what was so important for taxpayers. I think that he emphasized a lot of important factors, and he came to conclusions that you guys clearly ignored. I mean, it's evident that you guys are socialists. It is very evident that you guys don't care about what's going on in your backyard. Okay, so it's shameful for me to see Councilwoman Craig be coerced by President Bakay, because clearly you couldn't even read the paper you had in front of you. Okay? And it's also shameful.
Ms. Gomez, I have a question. Does this pertain to resolution number 9?
It pertains to all the resolutions that are clearly being ignored. Tony Dastra is doing a fine job emphasizing and outlining all these things, and you guys just clearly ignore everything. You ignore it. You put a rubber stamp on things that doesn't make sense. You give Tina Campbell praise for doing a job for what? For being inconsistent on a budget? Come on. Stop kissing ass. Seriously. Okay? Worry about your people. The taxpayers, the homelessness. Never in my 30 years here have I seen this so bad.
Ms. Gomez, I want to remind you.
It's shameful. Very shameful.
There is an additional public comment period that is coming up.
Thank you for letting me speak. I think everybody needs to speak.
Additional public comments on resolution number 97. Hearing none, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Matt. Aye. Mr. Roy.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch.
Aye.
President Bacon.
Aye. That concludes our legislative agenda for this evening. We now move to our second public comment period. It's open for issues that were not previously on the agenda this evening. Duration of comments is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Please begin with your name and block of residence. If you wish to make public comment, please come forward at this time.
Jose Rivera, 100 blocks of Court Street. I'm back. For the past 3 days, I've been at Crystal Park day and night. This is safety issues at this park. We definitely need a camera inside the park. It's no way out of it. That park does not have a camera inside the park. I'm not talking about the camera that's outside on the corner. It doesn't catch. We also have 3 to 4 blind spots. I can't see what's in those blind spots. Also, the lighting is very doomy. I mean, can we brighten up the park a little bit? I mean, God, we need to brighten up the park because I'm old. I need my glasses. I can't see nothing. Issues with what we're finding in the park. Okay, let me address it real simple. We are finding syringes. We are. Okay, but that doesn't mean they're selling the drugs in the park. Okay, let me correct this. What they're doing in small parks are buying the drugs somewhere else and going into the small parks and doing it there. Why? They won't go into the bigger parks because they're too open, too spacey, and you can see everything. But you do have dealers in your park. You have them in Ben's Park, but you guys don't see them. But they stand up when they're with the homeless. If you look at them, you'll say to yourself, why is this guy over here? He's wearing Michael Jordans and fitted hats and everything. That's what you got to look for. They have it in Ben's Park. Your brand new park behind, what's that? What park is that? Over there on Prince Street, the new park you guys put up.
Eagle Plaza.
The Wall Street Mission. Guys, thanks a lot. You took off the trees, you brightened up the place, but guess what? They're still selling drugs in the park. I seen it, I witnessed it. So now, this right here, they donated like 20 of them to me and the kids. Well, this is what the kids use. The kids are very smart, especially the older kids like my granddaughter, grandson, because they've been with the group for 6 years, so they know what to touch and not to touch. But we're using these, and we're using gloves. And we're not just regularly throwing it into the garbage can. I usually call the Parks Department, and they always show up. Okay, Jose, we'll take that.
Mr. Rivera.
That's fine.
We've reached past.
Thank you.
At this point, but
so, at the moment, all we have in problem is safety. I need the safety. If I don't get safety, then I can't protect the kids.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Additional public comments for this period.
Irene Grievous, 400 block of West End Avenue. In addition to my earlier comment, I also, my tenants and I have, or I should say my tenants, have applied for the lead abatement program. And there again, there has been no response by the city. So all these programs are available. It seems to be available to a select number of people, I guess. And that should not be the case. Some of my tenants are in desperate need of, some of the programs that are available, yet they're being excluded because my name is behind it, apparently. So it's in retribution that my tenants also have to suffer from the city's actions having to do with these citations, particularly, as I mentioned at the last city council meeting, is numerous citations with trash that has not been picked up, trash that my tenants had to pay, my tenants and I had to pay to dispose of because the city failed to do their job as public servants, but yet I'm still paying for services that I'm really not receiving, but getting penalized for it. So I've asked repeatedly, I've echoed this over and over and over again. I would like to opt out of the city's program. and I could take care of my own trash without having to be, without retribution or suppression or oppression, and in retaliation for me complaining because the city cannot do their job. And I still have yet to receive any answers from Mr. Campbell, from Millsy, or from anyone for that matter. I continue to be ignored, as I have been for the past 3 years, and this is not acceptable. This is not acceptable. So I'm again asking for responses, which obviously I'm not getting, and so is there any responses, or do I just keep getting my 3 minutes and going along the way?
I can speak for the lead. Well, I can't speak to the lead applications because this is the first night that I'm hearing about those. So I'm happy to find out what the status of the applications are or where they are and that. Can you let us know when you actually applied and for which property? And you don't have to say so here. You can always send us an email. But then I have hearing of that, so I have no way.
And I have. It's 817 6th Street. My tenant has applied, but there was no response. But I did get citations. I mean, the citations has not been an issue. But as far as the trash, what is the situation with the trash?
I don't have any answers to that at this time.
Okay, well, who has the answers?
I see Director Campbell, who may have answers for you. Mr. Campbell, do you wish to address them during this meeting or privately with Ms. Grievous? Sounds like during the meeting.
Thank you very much. I'd prefer to address these privately with Ms. Grievous because she has been reaching out to us with additional information almost every other day. And rather than provide 40 different responses, I wanted to provide one coordinated response that addresses the variety of concerns that she has. I do not want to litigate or make the details of this part of this discussion, but as recently as yesterday, there was additional information that she submitted, and I did let her know that I will be getting back to her later on, hopefully by the end of this week, based on the information that she gave me. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Campbell. Additional comments from the public during this period? Good evening.
Good evening again. I just want to say one last thing. I've had my LLC for 10, 11 years now. I do public service. I work with the community on every area of their life, whether it's transportation, translation. There's a lot of things that I do for the community. And the feedback that I get from numerous people on a daily basis has to do with concerns that they have within their livelihoods. Affordable rental, housing, homelessness. There's a homelessness coalition that was granted millions of dollars and you have nothing. I don't understand. I asked the mayor to check on Fremont. Did you check on Fremont Street with the lady that was complaining about her taking a shower and the water, the conditions of the water?
I attempted to follow up on Fremont Street. What I can tell you is that a complaint was submitted to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection Bureau of Safe Drinking Water for an address that was not Fremont Street, but the department received a complaint on November 20th. The complainant was spoken to on November 20th. The concerns of contamination are related to information distributed for current lead or PFAS initiative. That this person outlined the Safe Drinking Water Program requirements regarding compliance monitoring to provide some background regarding the regulatory oversight of public water systems. The complainant stated they are experiencing a foul odor. However, the complainant specified the odor isn't from the water, but is coming from outside the residence. I could go on, but basically this copy of this report was sent to the City of Lancaster, independently verifying that there was not an issue related to this complaint. I do not have a specific address for Fremont Street. If you would like to provide that, please do.
Respectfully, that's not what I asked. The complaint in regards to Harrisburg, that's a totally separate thing. I'm talking about Fremont Street. The city had sent residents on Fremont Street a paper
Okay,
in regards to their concerns with shower, in regards to the odor, in regards to many things. You're going to tell me that since we last spoke, you have nothing? You didn't check with the coordinators or the administration?
address, I need a specific.
You don't need a specific address. You need to go into your files and do your job. That's what you need to do. Okay, it doesn't, this is not a metropolitan area like you're making it to be with all your Jersey friends. This is Lancaster City.
Ms. Gomez.
And it's very easy for you to go downstairs, check with an administrator, and do your job. How big is Fremont Street? Come on, do you live in Lancaster?
If there is a specific resident on Fremont Street that is experiencing the things that you're describing,
There is numerous residents. It's for you to do your job, and I don't have to do your job. You go downstairs and open up your records or get your administrator.
3 minutes of your time.
It's very easy.
What you're saying, we have a question outstanding, and if you have an answer for Mayor Sirachi, you can take it offline, please.
I'm done. That's all I have to say.
Further comments during this period? Hearing none, we'll close public comment period at this time. Our next item on the agenda is the report of the mayor. Mayor Sirachi.
thank you, Council President. I don't have an official report tonight, but I do just want to acknowledge Tim Stoldreyer, your last week as a reporter, most currently with One United. You're a philosopher, a fencer, a journalist. I'm thoroughly embarrassing you and turning you red, and that gives me great delight. Tim, you have been a great partner to the public. You are fair. You ask thoughtful questions. You're a reporter with that appreciates historical context and has the historical context of our community to report on issues of import today. And so we will miss you around this place, and we wish you well in whatever your next chapter brings you. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Mayor Sirachi. We have thoroughly embarrassed him. The next item on the agenda is the report of the President of Council. I do not have any specific report this evening, so I will open it up to any council comments at this time.
If I may, President.
Councilor Diaz.
I just want, even though Jose just left, I wanted to follow up with the conversation with the mayor, also with Chief Mendez in regards to security cameras. I did reach out to Lancaster Security Coalition, so they already have something that they're going to be reviewing there at the park for the safety purposes. I don't know if, I did send something to Campbell related to a box for any syringes or needles, because that is a concern. Working at the hospital, I know that there's bloodborne pathogens, that can occur, and children do play there, so I addressed that with Campbell. Hopefully, we can come up to some type of resolution for the parks, as well as talking with Chief Mendez. He obviously has people looking into these parks and areas where there is concern about drug dealing and possibly using drugs during times where children are there. So I just wanted to update everyone on that.
Thank you, Councilor Diaz. Additional comments from council. Councilor Craig.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to address the insult that was thrown at me earlier. I don't need Councilman President Bakay or anybody else up here on this dais to speak for me. I have my own brain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Craig. Additional council comments. Councilor Ahmed.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to take time to thank city staff and city directors. I know how much work goes into these budgets, and I know that you guys are doing this out of lightly or anything like that. And as somebody who works with budgets every day, I know how much hard work goes into this, and I want to thank you guys for your dedicated service.
Thank you, Councilor Ahmed. Any additional council comments this evening?
Council President.
Councilor Roy.
I'm going to second Councilor Ahmed's comments. I wanted to thank city staff. I know during this year, spending a lot of time doing the heavy lifting of not just creating one budget, but two budgets without knowing the outcome of what the home rule vote would be. And then once we did have home rule pass, the amount of time and effort that went into informing the public on this process. Just wanted to thank you, and to Director Tina Campbell, thank you for your leadership and making sure that we don't only pass a budget that helps us this year, but looking for the decade ahead and making sure that our city residents are financial, have a government that's financially responsible and good stewards of their resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Roy. Any additional council comments? Hearing none and having reached the end of our agenda, I'll hear a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.